This is Unfiltered Therapists, and we're about to break barriers, embrace growth, and invite you to join in this journey of true, authentic self-discovery. Let's do this. First and foremost, do you prefer Dr. Courtney or just Courtney?
Just Courtney.
I feel like that's pretty on brand. Fair to say. So, Courtney, affectionately known as the Truth Doctor to most of the world, is a licensed clinical social worker and has a doctorate in clinical psychology. But you are so much more than that. You are like a beacon of resiliency and authenticity. You very clearly do not just talk the talk, you walk the walk. You share so openly about your personal journey and your professional journey in a way that is completely unfiltered and something that we love and stand for so deeply. You have openly shared about your journey of healing through addiction, borderline personality disorder, diagnosis of autism as an adult, ADHD, being a parent, IVF journeys, your own coping with day-to-day life. Like everything is just so transparently laid out there. But your professional accomplishments are asinine, through the roof, things that most people could only ever dream of. Courtney opened her first treatment center in 2017, was given a book deal. My understanding is your book is due for release winter 2025.
Yep, it is.
We are all very excited for this. And today, what we're actually going to talk about is that exact process, that treatment center, and how you very openly 2020 expressed that you were struggling personally and going to take a step back, sell that center, and now we're coming back into this space and have so much to share about what it's like to have all of your dreams as you've always believed them to be come to fruition and realize that that's not the answer. Yeah. Something's wrong. So I will start by saying, for anyone who doesn't know this already, I have been obsessed with you, Courtney, since the day I decided I wanted to do therapy.
Oh my God.
And this is a funny story. I've literally sent Courtney a message like every year for probably like 4 or 5 years. But it makes me laugh because the trajectory of like what's happened in my career in that time is so different. You were the only person, literally the only person in the therapy space that showed up as yourself. And it was the thing I wanted to do so deeply and felt like there was no permission for anywhere. And every time I would say to myself, like, don't do that. No, like stick to the script. I always make the joke of like going to the mall and being like, I need to buy like loafers and a blazer because like, if I like, what do I wear? Like people have to take me seriously. And no matter what I did, it felt wrong. It felt off. It wasn't real. And your growth in those 4 years was my permission to just do what felt right.
Amazing.
And your permission to take care of yourself ultimately became my permission to also take care of myself. And so when I say that this conversation is such an honor, it is beyond an honor because I don't know that you understand the impact that you have on people that you don't even know exist. So thank you.
Thank you. This is such an intense introduction, but in the best way, because I think I come off, I don't know if I've said this about myself yet, but I think I come off pretty badass online. But I'm also just a very sensitive person too. And like, I'm literally on the brink of tears with what you've shared so far. I'm like trying to compose myself. So it means so much to me. Because really what I do have to offer is myself and my story. And it just means so much that it's made such an impact, and to know the impact that you will make as a therapist and with your company and everything that you do. It's just a beautiful process. And I really appreciate knowing what you told me.
Thank you. There is this, before we really get into the nitty gritty, there's one particular thing that's so funny to me. About a year ago. So for a lot of people, they don't know this, but like I was solo literally like up until almost a year ago to the day. And in a year of really embodying being myself and just owning every part of me and not trying to filter that out, I went from being solo at home to like, I have a team of 11 therapists and we have our brick and mortar site. And like, I'm here talking to you. This is like just all that happened in just living it. I'm sitting at home. I'm like starting to redo my website. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to like embody it. I'm going to put it out there, and I'm scared shitless. I'm like, this is going to be so hard. And around the same time, you had gone to Coachella and you had shared like, I'm at Coachella, I'm a therapist, I'm at a music festival, like, yeah, normal. And I was like, why am I so scared to tell people that I'm at Coachella? Like, I was like, why am I so nervous about this? So then I was like, I'm going to put a picture of myself at a bunch of festivals on the website. I'm going to put pictures of travel, of family, of whatever. And it was crazy how quickly people were like, oh, it's so cool that you just like have a life. And it makes me think of like when you're a kid in school and you think that your teacher like sleeps in the classroom, like doesn't go home.
Right.
Like, there's no life.
Yeah.
And it's funny how something so simple can make such a big difference.
Yeah, that's
Such a big
amazing.
difference.
I love that story. I don't even think it's funny. I think it's like monumental. Like, this is how
Seriously.
shit really works, you know? And I think a point that you're making is that we don't have to accomplish these big monumental things to make impacts in people's lives. We can simply share that we went to a festival and give people permission to be themselves.
Yes.
What we all need.
Like, what a concept.
I know, like, what the fuck? Why is it so hard for us to accept that? Really? And I guess more so, it's not why is it so hard for us to accept it, but it's why has it been so hard for the world to be for us? That's
Yes.
really the question. And we're changing that.
Yes. I'm so curious. How did you come to that place in your own career? Like, how did you become the truth doctor?
That's a big question. And I think when I try to reference the starting point, I think I was always this way, but I was afraid to show it, really. And I think that's why the message is so clear for people that lose their fear to be themselves through the experience of exploring my platforms. I've always been very unique, and I always thought that that was a problem. And I was treated as though that was a problem. And when I was in school, I really did not like being in school because it was sterile and it was strict. And I thought, I'm going to do this differently. Like, I don't want to do anything else. So I'm just going to do this the only way that I know how. And I've actually always been welcomed. It's never been an issue. And I think fundamentally for people, the fear is that it's always going to be an issue, but it's only an issue where you don't belong. Because if it's not an issue for you, then you're where you belong. And fundamentally, that was my problem. There was this voice that said, you just got this information, but you know this to be more true. So just fuck that shit and go with this. And it's worked so far. I've had a lot of failure and I've had a lot of success, and they are truly two sides of the same coin.
Ooh, I love that. I think that we often forget that like permission to fail is honestly the foundation of getting anything done.
Completely.
Like, you have to. And I love the idea of like, we often talk in our team around like, you choose to belong. You choose your sense of belonging. And if you know that there's a space that doesn't align with you and you're trying to belong in it, it's going to feel so gross. And if you just belong to what you know is true, you will find your people and it will feel safe. And you don't have to be everyone's cup of tea to be doing meaningful work. That's not actually how this works.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about how many people you as an individual practitioner will touch over the course of your career, it's not that many people, like directly sitting in front of you, like, and there's 8 billion people in the world. You maybe need, or we maybe need 1,000 to like us, to benefit from us, to have us be the right fit for them over the entirety of our career.
Yes.
And so for all of us to be the same, it implies that we think everybody is the same. And it just like literally makes no sense at all.
No. So true. It's like it goes against literally everything that we study and stand for, regardless of the way that you show up.
Right.
Like you can't literally believe that everyone is the same and then also be a therapist. It just doesn't
Yeah,
work that way.
it doesn't work. And if it does, then you're not the type of therapist that's helping your clients expand. You're helping.
Hmm. Yes. I feel like there's a large question mark here that is worth noting, which is like, it is not normal for someone to go into therapy and then actively pursue opening a treatment center. So for the general listener, what is a treatment center? And also why, how did that become your goal?
Yeah. So there's different levels for therapy and treatment. Outpatient treatment actually encompasses individual therapy. So on the bottom level, you have group therapy and individual therapy, couples, family. Then leveling up, you have intensive outpatient, which is 3 hours a day, 3 days a week. So you're just getting more care. Then the levels go up and up all the way to, if you work in substance use treatment, detoxification. That can come along with some groups, but you're usually puking in the toilet. And so you're just laying in a bed for a while.
Yes.
How I got to being a treatment center owner and being a clinical entrepreneur. When I was 15 years old, I found out that substances could numb your body, brain, and mind. And I liked that. I wanted to be numb. I wanted to not feel because I felt so much and was so confused by the systems of the world and interpersonal communication. Nothing made sense conceptually because I knew at a very young age that nothing really mattered and nothing was really real. It actually isn't. And so our brain does a really good job at conceptualizing the world and allowing us to perceive it in a way that we can stay alive. But for me, my brain and my body were different and I wasn't able to integrate as I should. So I turned to substances, one, because they worked, and
Yeah.
two, because my father wasn't in my life for the majority of my growing up and he was using drugs and alcohol. And I think it was an unconscious way of aligning with me being a part of him and like him, even though I didn't quite know him. It only took me 3 months of using methamphetamine and psychedelics to end up in rehab at 15. And I spent 3 weeks there over winter break. I thought I was the most badass bitch. I thought everyone was going to ask, "Where's Courtney?" "Oh, she's so crazy. She's in drug rehab." And no one cared. No one knew who I was. I was like, had this whole plan of how then I was going to have an identity. Then I was going to be somebody that somebody knew. If I didn't fit in high school in any genre, like cheerleading, the smart kids, whatever it was, I was going to find some group, and I found doing drugs and sleeping around, and I became that girl.
Yeah.
And when I went to treatment, I realized that people actually wanted to work on themselves and get better. And I didn't see that in my personal life. And I didn't know there was a way that people could get better in general because I just saw more and more problems building up as I was growing. When I went to this treatment center, they drove me around. First of all, it was an unlicensed fucking treatment center. And I didn't know at 15. It was an adult only treatment center. And I was 15. They had me in the adult houses, driving around with the adults. Like the adults would be putting makeup on me and taking me to AA meetings. It was like really fucked up. But I fell in love with the environment. I fell in love with the camaraderie of people and the honesty that I saw and heard in those meetings and in groups. And I'm like, holy shit, human beings get real in therapy. But the therapists weren't real. And the treatment seemed fucked up. And I was like, so I'm getting help as a client, but only from the other clients. Why? Because they're being real, because they're telling the truth, because I feel like I can see them in me. Why is that not happening from the people that are supposed to be helping me? And I learned that at 15. So 2 years after that, I made the decision that that's what I was going to do.
Mm.
TV shows started coming out like Celebrity Rehab and Sober House, and I was obsessed with those shows. And I made a determination. I said, I am going to become a therapist, and I'm going to work with Bob Forrest and Dr. Drew, and I'm going to become a famous doctor that treats addiction. At 16, I made that decision.
Oh
And
my
at
gosh.
23 years old, my first job in treatment was working with Bob Forrest in Malibu for 4 years. And I applied for that position through a Craigslist ad. And my first job was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. overnight, counting the medications for a 6-bed detox residential treatment center. I worked my way up at that place for 4 years and became the director of clinical operations before I had my master's degree of a 60-bed treatment center in Malibu, California. Then I realized that I could do a different type of job for people in terms of providing them more authentic care.
Mhm.
So I guess I can admit it at this point because they know it's true. I poached some of the employees and I opened my own center. The employees that I thought were making the most impact, they were therapists and counselors, and the employees that were getting the most shit for being the most real.
Mm.
So I took them and partnered with them and then opened up Good Heart Recovery in Santa Barbara.
Wow. I think that what is so cool about this entire story from start to finish is that like it wasn't like we often hear the come up story of I was helped by a therapist and then I wanted to help other people by becoming a therapist. And the fact that at 15 in rehab, at this time now, I guess by this point at 15, did you have a diagnosis of borderline by that point? No.
Not for 7 years after that.
Okay. So you have enough insight to recognize that you feel connection with people that are acting in an authentic manner with untreated borderline, working through addiction at, again, an age where none of us know what the fuck is going on or who we are. And that messaging is ultimately what makes you now. Like that realization is everything. And all of the rest of it is just like stepping stones to the ultimate bigger picture.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It's nuts. And I think it speaks to like how so many people want an answer about like what is the messaging that they're missing? What do I need to know? What am I getting wrong? Like I won't know until I this. I won't have it until I that. And like you had your biggest aha epiphany, the thing that will monumentally be everything that you are
Yeah.
in what should have been the time that on paper should make no sense.
Yeah, pretty
It's
much.
there.
It's wild. Yeah, the older I get, the more I have to look back and realize that all the pieces are connected, that there's a pattern, that there's a sequence. And I don't, of course, looking back, we can all find a pattern and find a sequence to some degree. But for me, okay, so side story, I was late diagnosed as autistic in February of 2023, which makes so much sense. I grew up with an uncle with really severe autism my whole life. Like I know it's in my family. And I didn't think about it for myself because I grew up with my uncle. And my mom recently has given me these fucking intelligence tests that she made me take at 6, 7, and 8 years old. And I scored 98 and 99th percentile on these intelligence tests. And now I'm having to look into something called twice exceptional, which is someone who is autistic and gifted. And like, I'm a mess, apparently, but I'm a mess that can clean it up. And what I find really interesting is that in these intelligence tests, where the scores were the highest were in procedures, patterns, sequences, and reading that had to do with people when I was 6, 7, and 8. So this has always been me. And I think it's just become colored by the fact that I found substances because I lacked coping in appropriate relationships. So like it would have been something, but it became treatment centers and addiction because that was how my pattern formed. Fucking crazy.
It is so fucking crazy. Okay, I really want to ask about the late diagnosis of autism.
Yeah.
I think that autism is very misunderstood. And there are probably hundreds of thousands of people that will never consider that this is a hiccup that they are experiencing every day because it's not what we traditionally understand ASD to be.
Yep.
What for you was the like click of like, did not see that, now I see it? What are the things that you wish people knew about ASD, autism spectrum disorder, to be aware of that might be something that they would overlook?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think it's important to start by saying that yes, there's ASD, autism spectrum disorder, but being autistic is not a disorder. And
Mhm.
that's something that that's what I did not realize is that if these supposed symptoms that are listed as the only symptoms of autism, right, that we all know of,
Yes.
um, if those specific things are not completely debilitating my life, why would I even consider this disorder? I like calling it autism spectrum conditions or just saying that you're autistic.
Yeah.
And that also mixes in with my borderline too, because I don't think I have borderline personality disorder, but I have borderline personality because I fucking do. I just do. And that's fine. And it's just not harmful. It's funny and fun and a little chaotic. um, but the thing is what so I had the diagnosis of borderline, and that covers things like interpersonal difficulties, emotional dysregulation. But what the way that borderline is framed is that your behaviors are a direct result of fear of abandonment and interpersonal issues.
Mhm.
And that is the case in some situations and was the case for my late teens, young adulthood. But prior to that, I didn't have a fear of abandonment and interpersonal issues, and I was still fucking crazy and a bitch, and everything bothered me, and I was so opinionated and rigid and controlled. And then after I started working on my borderline symptoms, those prior issues resurfaced. And I thought, this is not these attention issues, these sensitivity issues, these lack of like grasping general concepts issues are remaining. So I went to seek an ADHD diagnosis, and they said, well, yes, obviously, the way that you're describing everything and the amount of projects that you get done and like the way you can focus and not focus and all of the above answered some of the questions, but it still didn't answer everything. And I was meeting with a therapist after they knew I was borderline, I had my ADHD diagnosis, and I'm active on TikTok. And so I'm looking and listening to lived experience and even people self diagnosing. And I'm realizing, what the fuck? This is the one area of the DSM I know the least about.
Mhm.
Of course it is.
Yep.
And of course, the reason is I think I understand it because I grew up with my uncle. And I'm sitting in therapy and I'm realizing, what the fuck are my problems? Like, I am spending 60 minutes with this man, telling him that I spend my whole time when I'm in person talking to another person, worried about where my legs are shifted, where my hands are crossed, repeating what they said over and over again, preparing my answer, noticing the 18 sounds going on behind this person, feeling my heartbeat, feeling everything all at once. And I'm sitting there trying to manage that. And he goes, this is not, most people don't feel the way that you feel. Most people don't have this level of sensitivity. Most people don't have this level of empathy. Most people don't have this level of spider web thought or visualization.
Mm.
And he said, he has some other experiences where people have autistic traits and he thinks I should look into it. So then that night I put on an episode of The Good Doctor. And in this episode, he stopped and paused and looked up and he thought about it all in his brain. It was all visualized. It was all spiderwebbed and sequenced and connected. And I like dropped my shit. And I was like, I have never seen a more accurate portrayal of what happens in my brain when I think. And yes, that's a great thing. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's allowed me to create all of these things. And it is by far the most debilitating thing in my life. It's not my emotional dysregulation. It's not my difficulties with relationships. It's not my continued desire to numb, although I don't. It is that I cannot slow down my thoughts, disconnect my thoughts, not see patterns, and not feel as intensely as I feel. And those things that don't get categorized under borderline or ADHD, I truly just thought made me a bad person, made me not capable of living in reality, made me not capable of living life. And those are the things that I numbed with drugs. And
Oh
I
my
believe
goodness.
those are the things that led to my borderline. And now my goal, knowing this, is one, I'm fucking working on myself because I now know like I need to like, there has to be a way to reduce these things. And if there isn't, then I need to figure it out. And that's what I'm working on right now. It's really unexpected at 33.
It is, I think for me, something you just said that I'm like, yes, it's like we talk about autism from a perspective of like a lack of emotional attachment. And you are describing that your one of the most debilitating factors is literally the opposite, like a depth of emotional feeling, attachment, attunement, like which in a traditional understanding, everyone would think is like, well, that can't be it. Like so off. No, the webbed thinking. I often, even though now even talk about this, like the guilt I have of ways I've worked with clients where I'm like, oh, it's just overthinking. It's just a trauma response to trying to ensure that you don't, end up in an uncontrolled or unsafe environment. You're trying to think about 14,000 possibilities so that you can ensure that you like have a clean path forward. And the way that we excuse people's lived experience because it doesn't fit in the paradigm of like what it is that we think we understand is just unbelievably unfair. And I actually really like that you're like, it's the area of the DSM I actually knew the least about because I thought I knew the most by witnessing it in other people.
Right.
And it's just it's not, nothing is that simple ever.
It's really not. Yeah.
So timeline wise, because I'm obviously I've been following you for a while. What's the correlation between you realizing that something's out of alignment or that you need to readjust what's going on in your career and also receiving the autism diagnosis?
Great question. Well, first I want to say something that you commented on about the spiderweb thinking and us thinking that it's with this or that instead of realizing it could be something else. My book, Your Unconscious is Showing. That's the point of it. The point of it is to teach people that we function unconsciously even without trauma. We do not make our own choices, but we can make our own choices of what choices we don't make. So we can curate our unconscious, but our unconscious is what makes our choices. And our unconscious can be shifted left, right, up, down, diagonals through being born and just through being alive.
Yeah.
Not necessarily through trauma. And so I think that that's just such an important point to make. And it really just speaks to neurodiversity, but it's, I'm excited and I'd love to give you a copy and your copy. Actually, I'd love to give you enough for all of your therapists.
Oh my gosh, please. We are all like actively waiting to read. We are also all so much right now into like a deep dive of shadow work and like Carl Jung-esque type looking at the psych world, because I think that the unconscious side of the patterns that we repeat in our lives and the thinking that we can explain them when they're quite unexplainable, it is realistically that, yeah, we don't choose the thought that shows up or the way that we look at things, but we choose how we react to the way that that shows up or that sort of work. And it is so freeing to start looking at the things that we don't want to look at, like the amount of relief that comes from that side. I think that, oh my gosh, we're all afraid of our unconscious. Everyone's afraid of it. No one wants to talk about it, but it's so interesting.
Yeah.
I can't wait, especially given your background and everything that you've gone through. There's something to be said about like learning from someone who has not just like learned it in a classroom in a book and like gone out and become a specialist, but like actually lives it
Yeah.
and practices it. Like there's so much juiciness in that
Thanks. Yes, there.
needed.
So I think my brain went to the book because it's literally the question that you have is like the main thing I break down in the book, but I'll give it to you high level right now.
Yes.
So, I originally thought I knew something was wrong at 15 when I went to rehab, but I was not diagnosed with borderline till 7 years after that, when I got an ultimatum from my husband, Max, who said, the last 6 years have been fucking crazy. I'm sick of them. Like, you have got to do something different. And I was on substances I didn't know I was on. I went to the psych ward. I went to chemical detoxification. Again, it was my second time in rehab. And I was there I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And for those that don't know, the statistics say that 20% of psychiatric inpatients are diagnosed with borderline and 10% of outpatient. So everyone has individual therapy, that does outpatient group, keep that in mind. 1 out of 10. Of course, that's not how stats work, but in a general term.
Yes.
So there I was diagnosed with borderline at 22. I opened up my treatment center 5 years later because that was the catalyst. That was, okay, I already knew I had this dream. I wanted to do psychology. I've been doing way too many substances because I didn't know myself still. And I was, saw myself as the druggie, as the promiscuous girl. So I was I had a negative connotation towards myself, a negative perception of myself. So at 22, I got that diagnosis. I felt a little better. Like, there's a reason. I didn't know there was a bunch of stigma attached to it. And I started go, treatment, finish the bachelor's, get the master's, get the doctorate. So I started my treatment center, Good Heart Recovery, in 2017 after leaving that place in Malibu. And I did that for 4 years. Throughout that process, we had the pandemic. I downloaded my platforms and I started developing them. And then, actually, no, that's not what happened. So I opened up my treatment center in 2017, then had a major family trauma where Max was publicly arrested. And it was a fucking nightmare. And it was in January of 2019, 2 years after I'd opened up my center. And in 2019, that was the year that my son was turning 1. I was becoming independently licensed and I was finishing my doctorate. And my husband was publicly arrested 10 days into that most important year of my life. And I plummeted. I owned a treatment center and I was over drinking. I owned a treatment center and I was anxious and traumatized and escaping to Vegas and leaving my baby for 2 days. And I mean, not alone. Max was there. Please understand.
Yes.
And Max is an incredible caregiver. I wasn't concerned. I should have been concerned. I wasn't there as a mom. I was lost and I was hiding. I was so fucking embarrassed. It makes me emotional. I was so embarrassed to be a human being. I was so embarrassed. And I thought my life was over. And I hadn't even done anything wrong. And it was so devastating. And at the time I was online and I saw the holistic psychologist was starting to grow her platform. And I had never seen a therapist before grow a social platform in the way that she was. And I thought, okay, I have a message here. Like, I'm trying to break through something. Like, I'm embarrassed to be a human. And I know that's the most fucked up way someone can possibly feel. Like, that is that. And that's what was happening for me. I realized as a child too. I was so upset about being alive and being a human. And it was so hard. And I realized, like, I just went to school. I'm about to get my license. I'm two-thirds done with my doctorate. I know that the way that I'm feeling is wrong. And I know that I have a message that I could share as much as I see this holistic psychologist person sharing who has less than 1 million followers at the time. And I said, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go over 1 million. And I'm going to share this message with people. And I'm just going to fucking tell the truth. So I called myself the Truth Doctor. And I downloaded the platforms. As I downloaded the platforms, I was running into a discrepancy of what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. And the old Courtney had opened up Goodheart. I mean, it was great and it was beautiful. And it was still the old Courtney that opened it. And so I was wearing 18 hats and I was taking on everything. And my trauma had created that business. So over time, through TikTok and realizing there's more going on, I got the diagnosis of ADHD at the end of 2022 after I had sold the business. So I sold the business because I still thought it's me, it's my borderline, I'm feeling suicidal, I can't manage this. Like what was I thinking? What the fuck was I thinking? Like I am such a mess. And so I sold it. And then I got the diagnosis of ADHD 12 months later, and then the diagnosis of autism 6 months after that. And once I got the ADHD diagnosis, that's when I realized, oh, it's not just me. Like, it's my brain and my body. And literally right after that, I said, I'm opening another treatment center. I said, I'm not giving up on this. Like, it's not me. I'm not doing human wrong.
Nope.
And I need to keep sharing that message. So now I'm opening up another one. Sorry, that was such a long answer.
Oh my gosh, I feel like it's not long in comparison to the lived experience of going through all. I mean, there's a lot, right?
Yeah.
Curious because, something you just said there that was like, oof, is my trauma built that business. And I think a lot of us set goals that we think if we just eye on the prize, get to that point, do that thing, this will like fix everything, I'll be good. Like that's like the picture of happiness. I remember it was actually the Stutz, the Jonah Hill therapist, Stutz on Netflix. And he talked about this idea of like a picture, like a still in our minds of like, when I get to that picture, I will be happy. Everything will be solved. But the picture's a still. We don't know any context of it. We don't have sound. We don't see movement. We don't actually see how people feel about us in that moment, how we feel about us in that moment. And I think we don't care. We just keep going. We think like that'll be it. And then we get there and it's not it.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to then go down the rabbit hole of like, it's clearly a me problem.
Right.
I'm the problem. Because if I can have everything I've ever wanted and still it's not right, it's not enough, my life's falling apart, I'm fucked up. I can't have good. And I think that we don't talk enough about people's fear of success. It is fucking scary to get everything you've ever wanted and then not feel the way that you think you're supposed to feel when you get there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's debilitating. It's like, it's against everything we've ever understood about ourselves. And I'm curious for you now, because we're at 2024. You've taken a couple of years to like, I'm assuming, do some self-development work, some like deeper understanding. You're working on your book. You have a 3-month-old. So there's also that. Yeah. Do you find that you now, in rebuilding your new center, have the same fears creep in that like, what if I do this wrong? Or like, what happens if this comes to fruition and I still feel the same way? Like, how does that come up now?
Yeah. So I know that my trauma built my first business. But what I realized between now and then was exactly where you were just saying, I thought there was something wrong with me. But what I realized over this time, it wasn't that there was something wrong with me, which is what I always thought. It was just that there was things I didn't know. And that was also always the truth. So I learned through this period. I didn't even need to heal. I needed to learn. Learning came before healing because I wasn't just healing who I was learning who I was, and that in itself was healing. And so when I think about people that are starting a business and then maybe realize like this one isn't fucking for me, keep in mind it's not that there's something wrong with you, it's that there's something you don't know. Whether that's something you don't know about yourself, something you don't know about your industry, something you don't know about your own goals and dreams, or who you want to partner with, or what your actual purpose is. It's not that there is something wrong with you, even if it feels like there is. I was suicidal, which is why I sold my business. That still doesn't mean that there was something wrong with me. It means there was something I didn't know. And what I didn't know was that I was autistic. And now I know. And I know that I built those businesses because of what I am good at.
Yes.
And now that I know that I'm good at it and I know what I need to know, including that there's nothing wrong with me, I can do it again. So am I afraid? No, because I now know what I needed to know. That is, there is nothing wrong with me, and this is how I function. And now I can go.
What you just shared is like, my brain is blown in the best way. A lot of people in, my sphere know that I've been going through like a real hot moment of self-development work and hitting a lot of walls that totally lend back to like, I think I'm just fucked up. 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 And like this cycle over and over, and having it reframed as you're not fucked up. You're not broken. There's just something you don't know. Like the amount of relief and freedom, and it's like taking a deep breath. Like it doesn't feel so stuck or like a wall. And it makes it feel like nothing that ever feels that hard is impossible because there's just more to learn.
Yeah.
I also think that we have such a fucked up perception of what healing means. Like, I think that we all think that like, or we have this goal that like healing is going to mean that we ultimately never feel pain or feel like we're going to question ourselves ever again, or that every answer is going to come easily and that we're always going to be perfectly regulated and relationships are going to flow perfectly. And like, there's no graduating from therapy. You don't graduate self, development. Like it just doesn't work that way ever. But when you stop feeling stuck and realize that there's always a path forward, that's actually it. That in some ways the learning is the healing.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think when it comes down to it, even when someone's problem solving, it's not fundamental, it's situational.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fundamental, it's situational. Get yourself out of the situation.
I want to go back to something you were sharing, because I think that this is going to be so resonant for people for a variety of reasons. When you were sharing that after Max was publicly arrested, you were carrying so much shame for something that you didn't do.
Yeah.
I think about this in the context of infidelity, in the context of parents who are struggling with children going through behavioral changes or their own struggles, people whose partners are going through legal issues, business partners, like just the way that we take on what everyone around us is doing or going through and then live in such a weird silo of shame that we can't even understand because we can't put a finger on why we're owning it.
Right.
If you could give some level of simple advice to someone who's going to resonate with that message, what would it be?
It's interesting because I feel like I've lived such a shame-free life perceivably through my actions. But shame is one of the things I think I battle the most, but only because of the society that we live in. And the purpose of shame, why people shame other people evolutionarily, is to get them in line so that the crew, the group, the tribe are safe. There's no outlier. Think about that with everything we've talked about: types of therapists, neurodiversity, etc. Shame is to get people in line. We don't need any more of that. We don't need more people getting in line. And so it was a very intense battle in the beginning of 2019 for me, because I felt like I was losing that battle. Something I knew was so true, that like, fuck society and what everyone thinks, it was starting to drown me. And the reason it was starting to drown me is because I had so much to lose. And I think we need to realize that it's actually a really fucked up form of gratitude. I cared so much about what I had accomplished and felt so good about what it is that I had done, that I wanted to take on the shame of this person that was in my circle, because I cared so much about what it was that I had accomplished that I didn't want it to get fucked up. And what I came to understand is that there are other ways to be grateful for what I have than to take on other people's bullshit.
Wow.
So I don't do that anymore. And that's actually part of why I believe this next business will be so successful.
I have never, ever, ever heard shame and gratitude grouped into one, and it makes so much sense. If you literally felt that you had nothing to lose, there would not be shame attached to anything.
Right. Because it'd be like, fine, I'll leave your group. Fuck you.
Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, I don't want your approval. I don't want your shit. Go. Like, you need those two things are so correlated, and I never saw how correlated they truly, truly are.
Yeah.
I'm curious because so you and Max have been together, I think I saw on your website, like 18 years.
19 this year. Yeah.
So he's been with you this whole process, really.
Yep.
From how old were you when you started dating?
15. He was giving me the drugs that sent me to rehab.
Hey. I secretly love this. My husband and I have been together since we were 14. So like, I just always have so many questions about people that have like grown up together from like all the shit to now. Max also works with you, for you. I don't know how you would frame that.
Yeah, he works with me.
With you, okay. How does that work for you guys? Has it ever been an issue? Is it something that has been really helpful for both of you? Has it ever been a hindrance?
Well, I'm me, so it's an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it is, but it's because of me. So, well, Max was a partner in an online marketing company before, that's when I worked in Malibu, and I asked him to quit and do the business with me, and he did. So we've been working together for 7 years, the last 7 years, through both of our business ventures, all of our business ventures. He also helps with the Truth Doctor and the babies and everything. So, and he's super smart, and like, I couldn't do what I do without him. And I'm just like not very nice. Like, sometimes I can just be like, and that's part of my autism. Like, and that's what we've realized is like, it's not perfectionism. It's that I can't not see the details. And those are two completely different things, because I wish I didn't need it to be this way. It's ego dystonic. Like, I don't like it. It's hurtful. It does not help me. And so like that can kind of cause some issues. But I would say, you know, instead of going into the details, it's like, it's a personal issue that I have when it comes to working with someone that I can be so open with, because I'm very direct and I need what I need. And that's something that I'm actively working on. Like I literally inquired for a therapist last week to have her help me with the interpersonal issues that are caused from autism, not from borderline. So, but high level, like working with your partner is amazing.
Yeah.
You're actually understood. You can get support at all hours.
Yeah.
Super helpful. And you can make decisions in your business that align directly with your family, with those goals. And now that I've learned what I've learned, because again, there was nothing wrong with me, there were things I didn't know. This next round of business venture with my husband has been so significantly different, because I know that I don't just not like him. It's that I can't not see detail. And
Right.
so it's just an understanding.
Okay. Perfectionism versus an inability to not see detail. How do you tell the difference when you're in it?
Uh, it's a feeling. And I actually go into this a little bit in the book too. It's like, because it's either it's conscious or not conscious. Like, do I feel like I can control it or not? Do I want this document to be better, or do I want it to be fucking done and I can't get it done because I feel like it needs to be perfect? And so it's really like trying to figure out like what's the purpose of the behavior, you know? And is it
Totally.
voluntary or involuntary? Goal directed or goal avoidant?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people, like, I don't know if you see this a lot with your work and clients, especially because you do a lot of consulting with people who are business owners or kind of in this realm now.
Yeah.
Um, owning people pleasing tendencies, fawning tendencies, perfectionistic tendencies. I feel like it's rare now that I meet someone who doesn't self identify as a people pleasing perfectionist, but like that is a very overarching comment for something that is very nuanced underneath it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that point will hit people in a way that maybe they've never had it delivered, to understand that, like, is it feeling voluntary? Like, I just need this to be perfect because I want it to be perfect. I
Right.
can't imagine delivering something that's not perfect. Or is it I cannot stop finding every little thing, and so I have an inability to close this door because I literally can't. I feel like I can't do this.
Right. Exactly.
Different.
So different. And even when it comes to people pleasing, we are very quick to label ourselves or other people because that's just literally how the brain works. Like our brain creates concepts and categories so we can survive. And when it comes to people pleasing, you may not be a people pleaser, but you may please people. And I think that that's something that people need to realize is that's also purpose driven. Do you really care about people that much more than yourself? Or are you just doing that because you don't think you can do anything else and you go home and say, I fucking hate people? And it's important to realize the difference because being a people pleaser is fine if you enjoy pleasing people. But if you don't, then you're actually not a people pleaser, but you are pretending to be one.
Yes.
And it's important to know the difference because if you are pretending to be something that you are not, then you are wasting your life.
Mm. I love this because I think that there's a lot of things that we pathologize as being problematic, like, oh, you want to please people? We need to fix that. What if that's actually something that brings you so much joy?
Right.
What is wrong with that? If you are being honest with yourself and it's not to your own detriment, and yeah, you're not going home and you're, resentful and lying to everyone around you.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Could you imagine us saying, Mother Teresa was such a people pleaser? Fuck that bitch. Like, no, we love it. We
Yeah.
love it. And we don't
Yeah.
think, oh, she must not have been taking care of herself. She figured it out. And other people do too.
Exactly. And if everyone just stopped giving a shit about each other, that's not necessarily the answer either now, is it?
Right.
Like, that's not going to fix anything.
Exactly.
Sorry. Not like, we're not going to do that. Oh my gosh. I feel like I could pick your brain forever. I have so many questions. I think more than anything, people that don't already know or follow you, you have a unbelievable platform. I think when I looked, you had like 1.7 million followers on TikTok and close to 150,000 on Instagram. You know, you've prefaced your book, Your Unconscious is Showing, which we are all so excited to read.
Thank you.
I am more excited after today than I've ever been because you just blew my mind with like 14 things that I'm like, I need to go sit with that for a while. And with the treatment center that you are now opening, where are you at with that process? Where is it? And where can people learn more about how they could potentially work with you if they desire to?
Thank you for asking. So my first center was called Good Heart Recovery. And that was because I watched people that were like me or that used substances be perceived as someone that didn't have a good heart, that was bad. Either they thought that about themselves or people thought that about them. So the name of that one, Good Heart Recovery, was to literally help people recover from the belief that they did not have a good heart. This next business is called Exist Centers. And I named it that because I had to sell my last treatment center because I did not want to. I did not want to exist. And now I get to open up a center that is called Exist because I want to, and I want to help other people want to too. Right now we have an outpatient that is located in Laguna Beach. However, we have expansion plans over the next year and a half to go to Arizona, Washington, Texas, Hawaii, and Northern and Southern California in the next year and a half. They will be detox residential facilities, and we will have partial hospitalization and intensive outpatient in Laguna Beach for now, and hopefully the second outpatient will be in Washington next year. You can learn more about it at existcenters.com, and we are going to start taking clients in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is so amazing.
Oh my God, I have to tell you. No one
Please.
knows this yet, but I will tell you. Good Heart Recovery, I sold it to a private equity firm that promised me that they would leave it the way that it was. My best friend worked there, my mom worked there. They laid them off and changed everything. It was fucked up. But karma is a bitch. And the company plummeted over 2 years, and I bought the assets and I own it.
Stop it.
And I bought them for $0.
Stop.
So I partnered with the person who ended up buying it from the people who bought it from me. And now because they screwed over this person too, have put it under Exist and are now opening it as Exist with all of the assets that I built over the first 4 years.
Oh,
no one knows that yet. It's
God.
the first time I'm saying it because we just closed the deal last week.
That is fucking phenomenal.
So I saved the baby.
What an insanely serendipitous ending.
I mean, beginning. I couldn't let it go. It was the beginning of my spider web, and I was like, I need it. I need it back. And I got it back.
I feel like it's such a great example of how we have you can't predict anything.
Yeah, you can't. I never thought that this would be what was happening.
No. And you just kind of have to trust. It's just a lot of trust. You just do the thing, you learn about yourself, you lean into those lessons, and eventually things are going to spit you out where you're supposed to be. And sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I agree. Karma's a bitch. It also is such a beautiful gift too. Just play on the right side of the coin.
Completely. Yeah, you're right.
Oh my gosh. Well, if you ever decide to venture over to the Canadian side, love to see you. And we are so in need of good treatment here, which is, we're in a really interesting time right now of what public health care truly looks like. And we're all trying to figure it out. And I just I think what an incredible space to see the growth. I have a few people in mind that I know want to do such similar things that look for like a blueprint, a reason, a something. And
Yes.
again, I just hope that you never forget the impact that you do truly have, whether it feels like you see it or not. I will always have nothing but gratitude for you. My entire team, nothing but gratitude for you, and clearly millions of other people. Thank you so much for existing.
Thank you. That made me very emotional also. It means a lot to me. Thank you for seeing me. I spent a lot of my life hiding, so I appreciate it. And thank you for taking what it is that I provided and turning it into what you have turned it into. And that really just goes to show like there really is more in us than we believe. And
Truly.
it's not all I did was believe that in myself, and that is all you did. And I am certain that there is someone looking at you the same way that you look at me, in the same way that I looked at who I needed to too. So thank you for telling me. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to end this recording